What's the worst experience you had working in the fast food industry? Story 1. I worked at Starbucks and a woman ordered her coffee at 140 degrees in the drive-thru. She walks back into the cafe after pulling out and complains that her coffee was 139 degrees because she has a thermometer in her car and she demands it be remade. I laughed and asked if she was joking, and she demanded to see my manager. My manager remade it, but I didn't get in any trouble. She was ridiculous, but Starbucks' policy is to remake anything if a customer asks for it. Another time, there was a long wait during rush hour in the morning, and I apologized to a guy that it was taking a long time to get his white mocha to him. He glared at me and yelled, "You don't really mean you're sorry," and refused to be cordial. He continued to look at me with disdain for the next few minutes. It made me super sad at the time. I really was sorry, a-hole. I learned not to be affected by crappy people so much as I got older. I worked at Starbucks for 2 years, half of it as a shift supervisor. I feel all of your pain. My store was in a very busy location in Atlanta. Well, a location scout for the movie Baby Driver liked a stretch of road right next to our store. On a day like the one you described, a couple of the producers were on set and wanted to do something nice for the crew. They ordered 50 grande fraps. We were already busy as crap. We handed out so many free drinks to people who ended up being in line for upwards of 25 minutes. People were pissed. Worked at Starbucks for 2 years in high school, and the customers were the worst. Still, it taught me to be tough. It was my first job, and in the 2 years I went from crying because a woman yelled at me, a 16-year-old girl, for not putting a star on her Starbucks card, to telling a man to either tell me the problem in a calm manner or get the hell away from me. I got reprimanded a lot for my customer service at the end there, but really I was a nice person as long as the customers were nice, but if I'm getting yelled at over coffee, screw that. Story 2. Literally had a 17-year-old kid die in my arms. I was 19 and working at KFC in a bit of a rough area. It was a quiet day shift, so there were only 3 staff and no customers in the store at the time. A young couple who looked pretty messed up walked in and went straight to the bathrooms. After some time, the girl came out screaming for help. She said her boyfriend had gone into the bathroom to use heroin and he was not responding, and he was inside the locked men's room. My manager called an ambulance while I tried to get the door open. Couldn't kick it down like Chuck Norris, so I went and grabbed some tools and finally got it open. Found the kid, blue and cold on the floor. His pulse was faint. There was a syringe next to him. He had blood in his mouth, so I couldn't make mouth-to-mouth contact, and started administering chest compressions. The whole time his girlfriend was screaming at me to save him. I feel like I could sense the moment he had passed. The ambulance came within a few minutes, but there was nothing they could do. His mother came a few days later to apologize and thank us for trying to save him. There was some police questioning and plenty of nightmares. It had been about 17 years and I still think about it often. Damn, man. Must be horrible. I was about 16 and I was sitting at a bus stop on my way home from school. An old man stumbled to the bus stop to sit down next to me. He was breathing very heavily, and so I asked him if he was okay. He looked at me and all of a sudden he collapsed onto my lap and had a seizure of some sort and then face planted onto the ground. I was in shock and didn't know what to do. His face was bleeding everywhere. I called an ambulance and helped him up. He had a stroke and heart attack, I guess. It's often been in the back of my mind, and I've always wished I would have just been able to act faster and prevent him from hitting the ground. He was quite unresponsive till the ambulance came, and I thought that was it for him. Just a few weeks ago, I saw him in the shop close by. It really made my day to know he is still kicking. I had a similar experience, but thankfully no one died. I worked in a little family-owned donut and deli shop that had 2 washrooms adjacent to the side door, tucked around a corner and out of view of the front counter. People would like to duck in there to shoot up, which my boss absolutely hated, especially because we were close to a junior high school and sometimes kids would find used needles in there. My boss remedied the situation by installing a lock on each door. If someone needed to use it, they had to get the key from him, and if he thought they were going to shoot up, he would say the washrooms were currently being repaired. Well, one day the lock on the woman's washroom got jammed, so he put up a sign and left the door ajar while he went out to buy a new lock. I was on duty that day. Some woman rushed through the side door and ran into the washroom, slamming the door shut behind her before I could warn her it was broken. Cue me, 14 and afraid, trying to call my boss over the phone to get him back here ASAP. A few minutes later, the woman realizes she's locked herself in there, starts screaming and shouting, threatening to call the police and say we kidnapped her. I told her I already called 911 to come get her out. There was a moment of silence before she asked if we just called the fire department. department. No ma'am, I said. I asked for both the fire department and the police. That pushed her off the deep end. She started kicking the door and continued her little rant about how she was going to send me to jail if I didn't call off the police. Lol, nope. Although the sense of justice I got from telling her that simmered down a little once I heard her breaking stuff on the other side of the door. When the police came to pull her out, they found a ton of I don't know what on her. She also shattered the mirror and broke the toilet lid. It was satisfying to watch them drag her off, but my boss was pretty upset that me and my coworker had to deal with her on our own. Nice guy. I miss working for him sometimes. Story 3. I was working at a pub shortly after college. During the evenings, things would always get pretty stressful and hectic. People would be snapping at each other or saying mean things or arguing or whatever. Pretty standard stuff in a high-stress situation like that. One day, though, in the middle of dinner, the other cook, my immediate manager, but not the restaurant manager, apparently just had a bad night. He'd been getting progressively more and more agitated all night. Not with me, luckily. Suddenly, a waitress came back and complained that one of her tables was complaining because the food was cold. First, the manager responded by telling her that if she'd come to get her orders when they were done, they wouldn't be cold. But when she made some comment back, he snapped. He picked up a hot pan from the stove, and I was terrified for a second that he was going to throw it at her. Instead, he swung it as hard as he could at the entire stack of clean plates and knocked almost all of them off the table, shattering them on the floor. Then he literally tore off his apron and stormed out, but not before knocking another full tray out of another waitress's hands. Weirdly enough, the store manager was going to let him keep his job if he'd admit being out of line. She brought him in during lunch the next day to talk to him, and instead of apologizing, he smashed a coffee cup against the wall and left. All told, it was probably for the best. Went to an Applebee's late once for a few cold beers. Was driving all day, the only place open at the time that served beer. And it was like a burger night or something. Well, anyway, I'm in there just finishing up my beer and talking to the bartender and busboy. They were closing in 15 minutes, so I was just about to leave. Then this bus full of teenagers, like literally 20 of them, come bursting in through the door. They asked if we were still open, and the waitress said yes. God, I can still remember the look on that poor cook's face. I didn't order any food, so he was just kind of chilling with us, waiting to get off. Then boom. The only thing he said before sulking back to the kitchen was, "Damn, I know these guys are gonna want burgers." He looked so defeated. I wished him good luck and left, but damn, that would have sucked so hard. I can see why cooks can snap now. I wasn't even the one that had to work, and I was still a little pissed for him. Story 4. I had a rough-looking guy in a beat-up truck try to use one-year-old coupons. I refused to take them. That was a mistake. He held up the drive-thru and screamed at me, including, "Smarten up, son, you're going nowhere in life." Made me feel like crap until I realized that someone like that who was screaming those things at a 15-year-old running the drive-thru did not go anywhere in life. Reminds me of some lady earlier tonight at work on the phone who had a special order and demanded she get the sale price when she gets them. She was going on about how she knew how companies work because she used to be CEO. Must have been a real fall from grace to go from CEO to demanding sale price on some damn waffles. These people are mad, having a bad day or a bad life. And all they want at that moment is to get the thing, or failing that, hurt the people stopping them from getting the thing. Hurting people feels good, and they know on some level they aren't gonna get the thing. Real insults are based on the person giving them. If you value respect, being disrespected or diminished hurts, so you call people children or just scream F you in their face. I value my intelligence, so when someone really bothers me and I want to insult them, I call them stupid or ignorant and laugh at that, and not to their face, because I am a reasonable human, at least, and also really very stable and a genius. So then, what does a 45-year-old with 2 kids who don't talk to them anymore, who has worked at the same place for 17 years and makes okay money, but has no true prospects remaining, who will just sit and work for 25 more years before retiring if they are lucky to say, what insult would hurt them the most? You'll never go anywhere in life. Story 5. I was a waitress at a pizza place, and an older man and woman flagged me over, and they just started yelling at me, going on and on that they found metal in their food. And she's showing me and yelling, and I'm trying to apologize and saying we can make you a new pizza. I'm sorry, I have no idea where it came from. After several minutes of yelling, the man gets quiet and he goes, "Oh, I lost a filling." Then they tried to be all nice and laugh it off. I just wanted to say screw you for treating me like crap. One time I was doing a new restaurant opening for a pretty popular chain restaurant. They were doing a mock service where you bring friends or family and dine for free so the staff can get experience. You could also get invited if you were a member of their email club or something. Well, I had this woman yell at me, like straight red in the face, screaming because her food was taking so long to cook. Her free food. I think she said it was because I kept saying it shouldn't be too much longer or something like that. I worked at a pretty high-end restaurant as a waiter, and so often you'd get people who were complaining about finding things in their food, but only once did they eat most of it. "Oh, I was eating my steak when I found a piece of metal in it. Oh, I found a lens." And then you'd start asking them questions and go deeper into what happened. They never want a replacement meal, only a refund. The best story I have from that place was when someone ordered soup, ate the majority of it, discovered a lens in the soup and demanded a refund. When I went to take the soup, I went to grab the lens before the guy quickly grabbed it. I asked him to hand it over so we can check with the chefs, and he panicked and said it's possible it might have been his, and it happened to fall out without him realizing it until he scooped it up. He still asked for a refund because the lens potentially infected the food. When I was like 12, we were eating in a relatively upscale restaurant at an expensive resort in England. Halfway through dessert, I crunched down on something that is not exactly banana split texture. Turns out there was glass in the dish they served me. I was totally unharmed, although I was confused and annoyed. We alert the waitress girl, who alerts the manager, who comes to our table and apologizes profusely. He offered us a bottle of wine, which my parents declined, what the fuck guys, and made sure I was okay, insisting on us taking the number of the company's legal team in case my parents later found the glass had hurt me, so I could have private treatment. He, allegedly, ended up pulling every single banana split dish in the restaurant, paid for our meal, sent us room service, and thanked us for being polite to the staff and other guests. He also apologized and promised it wouldn't happen again. We could have been massive dickwads about the situation, but due to my parents' Christian faith, they weren't interested in suing, and being Brits, we weren't interested in creating a scene. 10 out of 10 would recommend eating glass, but take the damn alcohol next time, you muppets. Story 6. I worked at a McDonald's part-time while I was in college. One day I was working at the drive-thru and this guy ordered a lot of drinks. One of them was low on soda syrup, but instead of just telling me about it like a rational person so I could give him a replacement drink, he threw the extra large drink at me. Of course, the lid came off and I was soaking wet. The manager, who was actually pretty good as far as fast food managers go, saw this happen. He took off running into the parking lot, flagged down the driver before he could leave, and told him to never come back. Then he came back in, found me a dry uniform shirt, and let me have a few minutes on the clock to sit in the break room and calm down. Sounds like he's your Adam, the greatest manager I've ever had. Greeted everyone with a smile, and if he knew you were comfortable with it, a hug, if not a handshake or fist bump or whatever you were comfortable with. Always managed to get everyone through the busiest and most stressful times with a smile. Couldn't move in the restaurant while he was working without hearing someone laughing with him. Had a couple of shifts with him shortly after my grandma died where he told me to go have a sit down and a coffee because he could see I was upset, and more than one shift he let me cry on his shoulder and hug it out around then too. Shame his girlfriend pressured him into moving away with her, but happy for whoever he was managing now. They get to have an Adam story. Dude, I had this guy in a huge truck order a large Coke. We have automatic fillers for a certain size, so I just pressed the button and got the guy's food. I handed him his drink and he took off the lid and complained I Jewed him out of the drink. I think I hit the wrong fill button or I didn't put enough ice in, and I was more than happy to fill it, but he came off as the biggest a-hole. He even threatened to get the manager to calm down. "I'll fill your soda up with your pre-diabetic hole." It was my mistake, and I was totally cool with filling his soda. It takes 2 seconds and costs us nothing. Some people love to treat other people in lower jobs like crap to feel good about themselves. I was like 17 or 18 at the time, and it was my first part-time job. Don't treat me like I'm a high school dropout lifetime employee or something. I quit my sophomore year of college just because I was sick of being treated like crap by customers. I'd say I was a solid employee, and my store was really well managed, but you couldn't fix some of the attitudes people had when coming in. Worked for McD when I was 14. A slow day before Christmas up in Michigan. Not a lot of people coming in, lots of snow, and a nice day for a hellishly busy first job. Well, my crush, a high school senior, was working there, and we had to park a lady. I didn't know the salt truck had just gone around the shop, and also had the scatterbrain of a 14-year-old at her first job trying to be cool around the cute guy. My boss asked me to run the small order, but they waited for fresh fries. It had only been a few minutes. I went out the drive-thru side door with the tiny step down and to the parking lot. Forgot I missed it. Slid into the snow on my heel holding all the food. Fell forward, smashing it, hit my head, and slid through the fresh salt snow and ice. I hear a voice shout out the drive-thru window, "Oh my god, are you okay?" It was the high schooler. My lovable, wonderful big bear of a boss ran outside and scooped me up like I was his own child and brought me in. He set me on the side counter and helped me clean off when the woman busted in screaming. Now she had to see the whole thing. She was one of the only people there. Slow night. And I was right behind her car. Anyways, she screams about having to wait and all the like, and my boss just looks at her while I'm sitting there bleeding, looks at me and tells me to call my mom, then turns to her, offers to make her food again as her food was just pancaked, to which she refuses and continues to scream. So he sighs and rips her a new ass in the middle of the store and tells her how she must be a monster if she could be upset after I just fell. Offers to make her new food and she's still moaning after he tried to fix it and remake it. She still yells, so he gives her back her money and tells her she isn't welcome at that store ever again. Terrible job, but I'll remember that boss forever. Story 7. McD's was my first job at 16 years old, and I was hired just before the Beanie Baby Happy Meal toys. Lines out the door. Crazy women demanding we get them a certain toy, impatient and crappy people. People would say degrading crap like mentioning I was working for minimum wage if they felt I wasn't working fast enough. People suck. On a related note, my mom used to collect them. There was a line for a store that sold the Beanie Babies like it was Black Friday or some crap. A guy got pissed at my mom because she saw him cut in line and she wasn't having it. Other people there supported my mom in what became an argument. The guy threatened my mom, alluding to him killing her. The dude leaves and my mom returns to a car that has been keyed to all hell. It's a small town, but I was surprised to see the incident in the local paper. Solidarity with ya. I was there for the great teeny Beanie Baby wars. I remember the bread truck being how the boxes got to the building because of the crazy people that would sit around in the parking lot and wait to see if we got anything on the normal truck. I also remember the zoo that the restaurant was during that time and watching a coworker who was fired for this throwing one of those goddamn things into a fryer that people could see. Good times. Our manager was also cool enough to keep a set for every single employee if we wanted them. Sold that set for some good cash at the time. My first day at McD's was the first day the Beanie Baby Happy Meals came out. The manager had to keep telling the angry women demanding the maximum number of meals at one time that it was my first day and I was in training, which just meant they called him names as well. I was seriously trying to learn the new computer system with an angry mob practically crushing up against the counter. I had suppressed that memory. Story 8. I worked at a popular Canadian coffee franchise almost 10 years ago. One day, a drive-thru customer had some sort of altercation with a pair of pedestrians who had been walking through the drive-thru. The way I understand it, the customer had almost hit the pedestrians, a man and his mother, and then had started shouting. This is what I heard over the drive-thru headset. "You want a face full of bicep? I'll give you a face full of bicep." I had a teenage coworker who believed in Santa. When a mall Santa came into the store, this coworker started looking out the windows for his sleigh. I had a teenage coworker who asked me, "What's a Nazi?" with total sincerity. When I explained what a Nazi was, the follow-up question was, "So do we like them or not like them?" I had a customer hurl racial insults at a coworker because the coworker did not butter his bagel in the manner he expected. I had a customer who requested a bagel dripping in butter, noting that she would send it back if there's not enough butter. I buttered until the butter was soaking the paper. She sent it back, quite livid. I put a burger patty worth of butter on the bagel. She opened it again, inspected it, was clearly still not satisfied, and drove away angrily. Story 9. Last week, I was on the assembly line at my McDonald's making sandwiches when my manager ran up to me and gave me a phone, saying there was someone having a seizure in our men's bathroom. I ran into the bathroom with ketchup and grease still on my fingers to find a 60-year-old homeless man having a stroke on the floor with a bunch of blood coming out of his mouth. I sat there for 6 minutes with this dying guy while on the phone with the 911 operator until finally some help arrived. Then I go back, wash my hands, and go right back to making sandwiches. Story 10. I worked at IKEA in the restaurant, not the main one, but the crappy one at the end. I remember we sold out of pizza and the next one was 6 minutes long. We had 6 people ask for pizza, and we asked if they were fine with waiting. So we eventually sold out of the pizza that was still in the oven. Well, it's finally ready, people are waiting, they already paid, and my coworker took it out of the oven as another coworker was calling his name from behind him. When he turned his head to see who called the pizza slid off the peel and fell the cheese side down, making a huge splat. The sauce went everywhere, and there was just a collective "ah" from the people who had ordered that pizza. At first, I was laughing because at least it wasn't me, but then we had to process 6 refunds while the line piled up. Story 11. I used to work at Sonic. On rainy days, especially when it was pouring, people would intentionally park across the lot, the spare spots that weren't covered by their famous awning, and make the car hops walk the food out there to them. We'd be standing there outside their car window with the food on a tray waiting for them to roll down their window. They'd take their sweet time getting out their cards or cash while we were getting drenched. All the while, there were plenty of open spots under the awning, closer to the restaurant and out of the rain. By the time they took their food from us, they would demand the meal for free since it was wet. Mind you, not wet enough to give back the food, just wet enough to demand a full refund while they shoveled the offending fries in their mouth. Those people also never tipped. Also, we had people who would make us go back inside and replace their 44-ounce drink 4 and 5 times, even when you insisted it was the right drink. This ain't diet. Sir, I poured this drink myself. I can assure you it's diet. I want you to go back in there and do it again, and I better not have to send this back a 3rd time. Don't feel bad if you didn't know until now that Sonic employees get tip wages. A ton of people have no idea, so they never tip. That's a known thing when you work there, or at least at my location. Also, you can't tip on a card there, so even if you wanted to, there wouldn't be a way to do it, and cards were 50% of our business. Now, they're probably even more. Seconding this one summer during a really bad thunderstorm, this dude parked in the furthest stall in an otherwise empty lot. He ordered $50 or so worth of food, and when asked if he needed any condiments, he said no. I took his order out, had to tap on his window to get his attention, and handed him his food. He checks each individual item while I'm getting soaked in the pouring rain, watching lightning strike around me, before handing me his money. Then asks if I can bring him some ketchup packets. I put on my best smile and said, sure, because I thought I'd get a tip out of it. Nope, I was so pissed. Story 12. I worked at a place known for waffles. We actually kept our store fairly clean, so there wasn't an issue there. 2 of my favorite stories actually involved equipment breaking down. 1. You know the waffle irons? Apparently they sound like a stereo shorting when they decide to die. I worked the 3rd shift, so it was nice and quiet at about 0200, and then zboom! I nearly hit the roof. The electric outlet was sparking and on fire. Thankfully, our cook managed to get the fire out and the damn thing unplugged before it caused any real damage, but the whole place smelled like smoke and fried wires for a good day or so. 2. This is probably the worst, but even then I'm still warmed by how well our crew held together. A couple of minutes after midnight, on what was now New Year's Day, our dishwasher decided to journey to the giant garbage heap in the sky. Happy New Year! So we are absolutely slammed with drunk people ordering a heap of food and a non-working dishwasher. Damn. The entire night, us 3 servers and the 1 cook, who is the same from the first story, took shifts hauling all the dirty dishes onto a cart and running them into the back room to wash by hand in the 3-section sink. 1 part for dirty dishes, 1 for soaking and washing, and 1 for drying. One of our servers was trained on the grill, so she and our cook would swap out every half hour, and even the cook was taking orders at the time. Our regulars were stacking plates and acting as busboys. My own friends were wiping down tables so the people standing could sit down, and the plates and bowls were being used as soon as they hit the shelves. It was a nightmare. At the end of the night, when my manager and the morning crew showed up, they got a rundown from us. The manager started, then pointed at the back door and told us all to go take a long break before we had to do our end-of-shift duties. We all had that 1,000-yard stare, but damn it, we lived. Story 13. We had a notice board that customers could pin their adverts on. One week we took everyone's stuff off so that we could use it as a memorial for our coworker who had just recently passed away. One customer came in and started going ballistic at us that we took her advert down. She didn't care that it was a memorial. My coworker ended up crying out the back for the rest of her shift. One of my good friends died while I was working at McDonald's. This was a small town and she was quite young, so it made the front page of the news. Next day, someone came through the drive-thru and shoved the newspaper in my face, which had images of the violent car crash that killed my friend. The customer just kept talking about her. She didn't know my friend or anything, but just kept talking about the horrible details of the crash, what my friend's body looked like when the EMTs arrived, implying there was alcohol or drugs involved, etc. I started bawling and walked away. This woman complained about me for leaving my post and being heartless, for not wanting to talk about the poor girl who just died. I don't think I have ever been that angry before, but I'm pretty sure if she was still there when I was told about her complaint, I would have punched her. Story 14. Not necessarily fast food, but I used to work in a bakery where our head chef had a reputation for being a grade A dick. Our nicknames were stupid and dumb. We had to work at an insane pace and he acted like he was God's gift to earth. The one that stuck with me was when I made a customer a sandwich and she requested a side of avocado. Our avocados were not ripe at all. I mean, it was like plastic. I mentioned this to her and she said it was fine, so I sliced it for her and gave it to her. She called up about an hour later complaining that her avocado was not ripe and she was unhappy. People are stupid. What the hell is up with that? I used to work at an independent theater and we served coffee. We had this huge festival going on and we had forgotten to brew up our pot of coffee for a few hours. So, of course, one guy orders it and I tell him it's going to be cold and gross and he says that's fine. I felt bad, so I didn't even charge him for it. He comes back seconds later, slams it on the counter like I murdered his children and mutters, "This isn't even hot." It's like, how the hell did you even get out of your house, dude? Story 15. I worked at my local McDonald's for 4 weeks last year. I broke my foot and sprained my ankle right before Thanksgiving. I told the store manager right after I left the ER, and she told me to come back after I saw my orthopedist. I did, but she was gone, and a different manager told me to get a note from my doctor so I could come back to work because they needed people desperately. I got one, and a different manager took it from me and said she wasn't sure on what to do because she wasn't sure if I could work, and said she'd call me the next day. I haven't heard anything since, and it's been about a month and a half since I talked to anyone and no one has called me back. I'm sure that with all of the miscommunication, they just assumed I walked out and quit. I have a better job now. Story 16. At McDonald's, of course, I was the first assistant manager. We had a kid who was just promoted to shift manager. He was a very good employee and he knew his stuff. We had high hopes for him. On his very first shift, 5 minutes into the shift, he does a walkthrough of the dining room. He asks a girl who was 7 months pregnant to change a trash bag and she tells him no, that she can't do it. He walks to the back of the store, gets the trash masher, basically a mop handle with steel plates on the end to compact the trash, walks to the garbage bag, and mashes the trash. He then takes the trash masher and knocks the girl out with it, screaming, "I'm the boss, and everyone better do whatever I tell them," and continued to yell at everyone about how she needs to be fired for insubordination, and that no one else better ever test him. He was arrested in the store and was trying to argue with the police officers that he was in the right. The girl had a major concussion, but she and the baby were okay. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you would like to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like, and don't forget to subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.